The newest 6-man Sagroth Lair of Vermin has been out for a while now, and overall the instance is actually not that hard, but there are things you can do to make it easier for yourself. In this video I'm gonna do a basic guide explaining some basic tactics so you and your friends can have an easier time with this instance. So as you can see, I came in late on my lore master, and I'm gonna kind of slowly just walk through this trash pulls and explain some base mechanics. The Angmarim in this instance aren't really that bad, they don't really do that much to hurt you. One interesting mechanic introduced with this update is the Iron Crown Sorcerers in this instance. The thing about these sorcerers, they will do an induction, either put a healing or a damage buff on themselves. If they do the healing, they can heal their allies. If they do the damage buff, they put a damage buff as the one you can see right here on the screen. And the cool part about this mechanic is you can actually kill them while they have the buff. These sorcerers, they do an induction where they either do a healing skill or a damage buff. You can see the damage buff right here on the screen, little red thing here. And the cool thing about if they do the damage one, if you kill the sorcerer while the damage buff is active, you actually steal the damage buff and you can use it yourself. Let's take a look at my bar after we kill this. You can see this icon right here. It's going to appear on my bars. As soon as the sorcerer dies, you can see that I have this buff now on my bar. So keep an eye out on the sorcerers. Don't interrupt their damage buff, but instead kill it while the damage buff is active to get an easier time for yourself. As you can see, this sorcerer is doing healing. I'm not sure which one this one is doing, but the idea is you kind of want to interrupt the healing and let the damage one go off. Other than that, we have the tiny vermin, the very small rats running around. And you can see they do an induction. If their induction goes off, they leave a disease puddle on the ground that will deal morale damage over time. As you can see, a couple of the inductions went off, and if you step in these, you take morale damage. The red wound you see on me here is a power drain applied by the Barghest. So that's another thing to kind of look out for. Try to clear these power drains. But obviously, the tiny vermin as much interrupts and stuns and CC as you can. The rats will also apply corruptions to themselves, making it harder to hit them. I believe it's an evade buff they put them themselves. So as much CC and CR removal will help dealing with the pesky little rats. The small rats also have random aggro. You can see this red icon here. They will come to you if you force taunt, so if I challenge on my guard, they will stay on me until the force taunt is gone. If there's no force taunt on the ad, they will run around attacking randomly. But like I said, the Angmarim in general are probably the easiest mobs to fight in this instance. I'm gonna skip boss 1 for now and just keep going through the trash pulls. After boss 1, the trash pulls get a bit harder because we're now gonna get the slugs as well and a bunch of sickle flies. I'm gonna play this a little bit more. As you can see, the sickle fly will do a yellow bar infection. You can see the yellow eye on my head. That's an infection attack, and if infection goes off, it's an AoE burst around the person with infection. You can see that this infection does not get interrupted. It's gonna go off on me because I have the yellow eye. I'm the target of the infection. Anyone close to me will get hit. As you can see, the minstrel right here will get hit by it. Boom, you can see 3 people getting hit. And I believe this disease here is probably applied because of the infection. So getting interrupts on those infections will make your group have so much of an easier time. Another example, you can see this sickle fly in the back is going to get infection off on me, and you can see that when it goes off, boom, everybody takes damage. Another mechanic for these sickle flies is that they have an aura around them, and you can see this aura by looking at my fellowship members right now. This disease kind of looking aura right here is actually a dot. If you stand too close to the sickle flies, you can see that a lot of my members are standing close to all 3 of them. They will take some big damage over time, which you can see now. All the people with the aura on them or standing too close will take a dip in morale. Look at this right now. Boom, everybody takes some damage. So another good idea for this fight is to not stand too close to sickle flies if you don't have to. The other mobs is the slug that will start appearing after boss 1. Now this slug doesn't do too much in general. They do apply damage reduction corruptions to themselves, so keep corruptions off them if you want to deal damage to them. But the main danger with the slug is a skill called Frenzy. See the gray bar going off, starting to go off here. If you let Frenzy go off, the slug will do a knockback and deal damage to the people who get hit. I believe it's a 360 around the slug. I've seen plenty of people just stand here unknowingly getting punted off by the frenzy, but you can counteract this by just CCing and interrupting this gray bar. As you can see, our Loremaster will stun the slug and the frenzy will not go off. Right there, boom. So just as a general idea, a lot of CC helps a lot with these trash. I would always recommend killing the Sicklefly first because of the aura. Try to interrupt the infection. Try to CC the frenzy from the slugs. And these trash pulls will be a lot easier for you and your group. The pulls towards boss 2 will have a variety of different of the mobs. Of course, you get these annoying little rats with the induction and they drop a puddle. The easiest and safest way is just to do small pulls and work your way slowly towards the boss if you have the rats in the group. As always, Sicklefly is your main target, and then the slugs, and then just AoE the rest. And you should just keep moving if you get puddles from the tiny vermin. Just keep backing up, keep killing stuff. The trash pulls aren't really that hard, but just those basic mechanics to look out for. So the main enemies are your Sickleflies and your slugs. Interrupt the infection from the Sickleflies. Kill the Sicklefly first because they have the aura. Try to interrupt the frenzy from the slugs. CC the rats as much as possible. Corruptions from the rats and the slugs. And if you get a bunch of puddles from the rats, just keep backing up. And this brings us to boss 1. In this fight, you're gonna get hit by sewer water. You're gonna get incoming damage. From what I've seen, this is unavoidable. You're just gonna have to deal with it. Just know that if you get these, they apply as corruptions on you. So once you get these, you're just gonna take more damage. Boss 1, Garvadak, I would say is relatively easy if you know what you're doing. The fight will start off with Garvadak, a soldier, a warrior, a bardcast, and a sorcerer starting off. And like explained before, if the sorcerer does the damage induction, it might be a good idea to switch to the sorcerer quickly and kill it fast, steal the damage buff, and then start nuking the boss. I would recommend just AoEing off the boss. If the sorcerer does the damage buff, you can switch to the sorcerer pretty early and kill it. But other than that, in the beginning, I think you should just AoE this pack here. If you're the tank, I would suggest dragging everything to over here where the next 2 sorcerers will spawn. And of course, if the sorcerer does a healing induction, you want to interrupt it so he doesn't heal the boss. Other than that, the first part is pretty straightforward. Just AoE and nuke off the boss. Only switch to the sorcerer if he does the damage debuff. And when we get to 66% and 1%, you will get more adds. 2 sorcerers will spawn over here by the gate. 2 new sorcerers. So watch out for the healing. If they do healing, interrupt it. If they do damage, ignore it. Just AoE everything around the boss. But to make this a lot easier, I would suggest doing what I do on Loremaster right now. If you drag everything to this gate, this space here will be cleared for AoE. These are where the next adds will spawn. 66% on the boss. You can see that we get 2 slugs and 2 Sickleflies, the most dangerous mobs from the trash pulls. And the main idea is to just chain mess and chain stun them over here for as long as you can. So Bane Flare, you use your reset as Loremaster, Bane Flare again when they wake up. And then after both your Bane Flares, you still have your Stormlore, which means you have 30 seconds of Bane Flare, so 15 seconds. Because if you mess them over here, they're not gonna get broken by DPS because the damage group is all the way on the left over here. My positioning is probably a bit off because this is probably the first time I do this mess strat. But as a Loremaster, when you get to 70%, I would suggest just walking over here. You can see they spawn by the gate over here and over here. I would just stand around here. As soon as they spawn, a Bane Flare, use your reset, go back to debuffing the boss. When they're about to wake up, you go over, you do another Bane Flare, you go back doing boss stuff. And then when they wake up, or if they come into the group, you then do your Stormlore. I would still recommend, even if the adds eventually get into the group, just AoE nuking off the boss. Try to interrupt the Sickleflies as much as possible. Same with the frenzy from the slugs. But if you do the CC strat correctly with double Bane Flare and a Stormlore, you should have plenty of time to kill the boss. You can see I do actually Bane Flare them here. I pop my reset. I go back to the boss, do some stuff. This Sicklefly got broken out by damage. I just let them come in, and I'm going to do my next Bane Flare right now. But now that the Sickleflies are finally in the battle, A lot of people are going to take the aura, so this is where you need to step up on the healing if you're a healer. I would suggest if you're a ranged or a healer not to stand too close to the boss, just to avoid the aura for when the ads come in. Just stand maybe on the bottom left of my screen here, away from the sickle flies, and just have the melee characters stand over by the gate. But as you can see, CC helps a lot. Now I'm going to use my Stormlord. Uses a lot of time without thinking about the mechanics. As you can see, my group does get really low. We do have a bear healer though, probably the hardest class to heal this instance, but CC helps a lot. I wouldn't worry about the corruptions on their slugs at all. Just try to interrupt all their mechanics and AoE and nuke off the boss. Like I said, if you're a ranged class that don't have to be close, you should probably be standing over here on the left so you don't take the aura damage from the sickle flies. But I think you get my main idea behind this. Just keep an eye out for the sorcerers. I believe another one spawns. Might be the one that we see right here. They will spawn more sorcerers over by the gate. Interrupt their healing, let their damage go off, and AoE and nuke off the boss. And try to do the Loremaster CC that I showed at 66%. Double Bane Flare and then a Lightning Storm. Preferably you do it as soon as they spawn over here. Don't let them come into the group. Double Bane Flare, keep those ads away from the group for as long as possible. And AoE nuke off the boss. And if you follow those basic steps, it should be a easy time for you and your group. Alright, boss to Radarig. Before going into detail about strats, let me first go over some basic mechanics. Number one, a mechanic that matters for all players in your group. Radarig will do a random attack, apply a wound to a random target. He's going to do it to our Loremaster in this instance. As you can see right now, he's going to turn around, boom, attack the Loremaster. He applies a wound on the LM. Looking at the effect of this wound, you have 10 seconds to pot this wound, or you will get debuffed. 30% damage debuff, reducing your damage by 30%, and also reducing your incoming healing by 30%, and that lasts a minute. So obviously you do want to get rid of this effect. The only downside is potting this will drop a puddle, same puddle that drops from those tiny rats, but the solution is pretty simple, like the Loremaster will do here. Go out of the group, pot, drop the puddle over here, come back to the group. So a pretty straightforward mechanic to avoid. Move out, pot your wound, move back. The second mechanic from the boss that counts for all players is called Infection. If you're standing far away from the boss, that's the only time you might get infection. This is why you'll see most group just following the boss, being close, because if you stay close to the boss, no one will get infection. But sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you might have to go out from the group to pot your wound. This is exactly what happens to me right here. So we're going to get a look at Infection. The boss turns around, applies the disease to me. I run out to pot the disease. I pot. It's too late. The boss is already doing the infection. And like we've seen with the sickle flies, infection will blow up damage on you and allies nearby. So you need to stay away from the group if you get infection. Other good ideas is to use a champ taunt if you have a champ, or maybe Power of Knowledge as a Loremaster, anything to debuff this big hit. I think the radius of infection is like 10 meters or so, or maybe 15, so just make sure you get out of the way. You see that I instantly run away from the group as far as I can, and this should be far enough. Like this distance is probably plenty. I don't think our tank gets hit, but it looks like the tank possibly gets hit here. Just make sure you get at least this distance away from the group. Just run out of the group if you get infection. But as soon as infection is done, I return to the group, keep on fighting as normal. The boss also has an induction called Tail Whip. It's pretty simple. Tail Whip does AoE damage around the rat, can hurt a lot, especially if the boss is buffed. Typically, you have your tank save the interrupt for this Tail Whip. Just make sure you get this interrupt. And the third boss mechanic we're going to look at here is something called Clinging Plague. Over time, the boss will do a gray bar called Clinging Plague, as you'll see right now. Once the boss finishes the Clinging Plague, every member in your fellowship gets this disease called Clinging Plague. And as you can see, this debuff is a overtime morale damage debuff. Every 3 seconds, subtracts 10% of max morale. There's basically a dot on everyone, and every time the boss does Clinging Plague, this will tear up. As you can see, Clinging Plague tier 3 is 30%, so 10% per tier. So it might be a good idea to try to get rid of this. So how exactly would you get rid of the Clinging Plague? Well, luckily you have the cleansing devices in this instance. When you click on the cleansing device, it'll spawn a green circle that you can step into to cleanse your Clinging Plague. You can see our minstrel popping this cleansing device, and you can see the Clinging Plague is gone from me. Everybody steps in, you get rid of the cleansing plague. So really helpful to reduce the damage taken by the plague. There is a title for killing this boss without using cleansing devices, but you can, I believe, do it on tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, so just do that on lower tiers. On higher tiers, I would recommend using the cleansing devices. This bleed on the tank will start with 12 stacks, and incoming damage will be 60%. Every stack removed will remove 5% of the debuff. So basically, if you cleanse 12 times total on your tank, the wound will be removed. The thing about this wound, if the wound stays on the tank, the boss will never reapply the corruptions. So if you only want the one set of corruptions, make sure you don't fully cleanse this bleed. Maybe take it down to tier 3 or tier 2. Watch your AoE clears. Just keep this incoming damage bleed on the tank with a couple of tiers, and you will never get a second set of corruptions again. So 60% on tier 12. You should probably remove some stacks, take it down to like tier 2. Tier 2 would be 10% incoming damage. Just make sure don't fully remove this bleed, so you never get a second set of corruptions. The corruptions reduces the damage taken by the boss, so it's a high priority to everybody to help remove corruptions. Obviously, having a class like Warden or Guard will help a lot with corruptions. Minstrel can do a lot. Just at this point, as soon as corruptions are up, everybody should be doing what they're doing, but also weave in their CR removals during this fight. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about before going into strategies are the ads that spawn in this fight. You will get tiny vermin like the ones we've seen in the trash pools, little small rats who do their induction. If the induction goes off, you get puddles on the ground, so you might have to move. But as always, a lot of CC, AoE stuns will help dealing with those rats. And of course, once those rats are active, I would recommend focusing AoE damage and trying to AoE them down. And at the 30-second mark, we get the 2 new ads introduced to this fight. Slightly bigger rats. One is called Ferocious Vermin, the other is Robust Vermin. These rats will also do inductions. The Ferocious Vermin will buff the boss, making the boss do a lot more damage. And of course, if the boss is buffed, and when it does the random attack with the wound, it might start one-shotting your squishier members. So very important, interrupt the Ferocious Vermin and you have an easier time. The same goes for the Robust Vermin. The Robust Vermin is a healer, and the Robust Vermin will target the boss, try to heal the boss. Another important induction to interrupt. The Robust and Ferocious Vermin can be tanked like normal, they don't have random aggro. But as always, those tiny vermin do have the random aggro, but they will go on you if you force taunt for the duration of the taunt. So as a tank, I would recommend, if you have tiny vermin, if you have an AoE challenge, keep using that challenge as much as possible to reduce the damage on your group. Now, when it comes to the timer of the ads when they spawn, the tiny rats can spawn a bit on different times. I think they're supposed to come out at 15 seconds. The big rats, the 2 big rats, always spawn in the center here, where Radirick starts. The Ferocious and Robust, they spawn at 30 seconds, and then the next spawn will be a minute 30. So I'm assuming it's every minute after 30 seconds. So 30 seconds, minute 30, 2:30, 3:30, and so on. And the tiny vermin are probably not exactly sure about their timer. It seems like every 30 seconds you'll get 2 or 3 more. So 15 seconds, 45, 115, and so on. The tiny rats will spawn under a player's feet. So different to the bigger rats. The bigger rats will spawn in the center always, and the tiny rats will spawn under someone's feet. But as always, it's a group effort, getting interrupts on the big rats and the tiny rats with AoE stuns. Champ Horn, Ride the Hunter, just any AoE stun helps a lot. And of course, normal interrupt skills will also help quite a bit. Alright, time for some basic strategies. I'm gonna look at 2 different strats for this boss. The first one is, I'm just gonna call it the Nuke strat. I would only recommend this strat on higher tiers if you have good AoE damage and DPS that you trust can deal a lot of damage. As you can see, our group setup is now 2 hunters, a champ, guard, LM, and mini. So these players I play with a lot. I trust them to do the Nuke strat. The base idea is to just nuke and blender everything together and get interrupts as we go. We kind of have like the first rats, the first tiny rats, like one of the hunters will get that. The big rats, another hunter will get that with the Cry of the Hunter. We have champ horns, we have guardians, shield smash to just continuously interrupt the tiny rats. I'm just gonna play this footage and explain pretty much what's going on. So of course we're just nuking the boss, waiting for the corruptions to apply. Tank gets to bleed, corruptions are up. We're all using our CR removals. We're gonna get the first tiny rats soon, I believe. Sometimes they're a bit delayed, as is in this case. 30 seconds is coming up. Big rats are out. They get interrupted. Tail whip interrupted by the boss. Probably getting tiny rats soon. Some groups might prefer to focus down the bigger rats, just to make sure their inductions don't go off. But in this strat we have pretty good DPS that we trust to just nuke the boss. I don't believe we even cleanse. We're approaching tier 2 plague, but we're just out healing and nuking. We're getting pretty lucky with the tiny rats. They didn't spawn yet. They should probably spawn soon. The ferocious actually got off, I think. Boss might be buffed. I'm not exactly sure if it got off or not. Doesn't look like it actually. We might have just got it in time. We have some tiny rats now, but our focus is just nuking the boss because we have pretty strong DPS. We just got to tier 3 of the plague, but since the boss is getting kind of low, we're just nuking it down. I go out to cleanse. I do believe I get infection. I try to run away from the group. Only the tank gets hit by infection and myself, so we're fine. Back to the group, nuke the boss. Notice the middle rat spawned at 130, but we got that interrupt, and now our focus is just to finish the boss, nuking it down. If tiny rats get their puddles off, we just simply move. As soon as you see the inductions go off, you just move as a group. If tiny rats go off, as soon as they go off, you move. Yeah, you can see we take a lot of damage towards the end. The nuke strat does work. Don't know about tier 5, this is tier 4. But as you can see, that's basically the nuke strat. AoE stuns, interrupts, and nuke the boss. Alright, time for the second strat, the more controlled approach to this fight. And it's one that I much prefer after starting using it this week. As you can see, this is our intended starting position. We're going to start on this corner as opposed to the center over here. And the main idea behind this is to use the edges. So when the bigger rats spawn, the ferocious and the robust, you mess one of them, you keep it perma-mess. Let's say you mess the robust, just keep it in the center forever. Let the other one come to your group. Focus this one down, kill it. Keep one of the bigger rats in the center. As long as you keep one of them alive, the other sets will not spawn. So the main strat behind this is killing one of the rats, leaving the other perma-messed. So it's important you watch your AoEs. If you ever get close to the center, don't break out this perma-messed rat. Other than that, the fight is pretty normal. The idea to go here first is to make use of the arena and the cleansing devices. We're going to cleanse Plague tier 1 here. As soon as we cleanse from here, we're going to move over to this corner. Probably get another Plague over there, cleanse it, and as soon as that's done, we're going to start making our way over to the usual last corner. And once we get here, it's just about using this space, moving around if you need, if you get puddles, and using the cleansing device over here when you get to like tier 2 probably, and by that time the boss should be dead. So one important thing to mention about the bigger rats in the center, they spawn at 30 seconds. Obviously, as soon as they spawn, they might induct, or they might just run to the group, which can be really annoying. So a couple of ways to avoid this: drop the healing runestone in the center before 30 seconds, or have a pet standing here, a Cappy pet or an LM pet, and the ads will spawn, start hitting the pet, and then your LM or your Berg, whatever, mez one of them, let the other one come in, interrupt it, make sure the induction still doesn't go off, and when the other big rat comes in, everyone switch to that rat, just kill it, get it out of the way, and then back to boss. And yeah, that's pretty much the base of the strat. I'm gonna play the kill we got with our group from my previous stream this Friday. So looking at our setup, we have guard tank, we have RK healer, we have lore master, 2 hunters, and a champ. So I'm just gonna play this and try to like commentate on what's happening during the fight. So the guard will go in and start the fight, instantly drag the boss over to us. We're using this corner. As always, stay close to the boss to avoid infection. I get hit by the bleed, I run out to pot, back to the group. The idea is that I'm gonna mess the initial tiny rats. As soon as they spawn right here, I cry the hunter. They're interrupted, we just AoE, nuke off the boss. Corruptions are on, we're removing corruptions. We used the cleanse. And pretty soon we're gonna start moving. We're at this 30-second mark right now. You can see the big rats spawn in the center. I notice here we didn't do the healing runestone or the pet in the center, but that's something I would recommend for the future, so the rats don't come in. As you can see, they come in really close. We get a mess on the ferocious, so right here everybody's like, don't AoE, don't AoE. We're going to move away from here and keep the ferocious locked down. We're going to switch to the robust. As you can see, now killing the robust. We're not AoEing, so we can keep the ferocious locked down. So now our focus is just getting rid of the robust. So after the robust is done, we just focus the boss and we AoE off the boss. I got another wound, run out to pot, back into the group. Robust is done, now it's just corruptions and AoE off the boss. I would recommend, since from this point there's not going to be any of the bigger rats, make an emphasis on AoE damage here. It's not really a DPS race. If you keep the tiny vermin to a minimum by focusing AoE, you'll have an easier time. So right now it's about AoE and interrupting the tiny vermin and killing the boss. So I'm pretty sure we're staying here because we're waiting for the Clinging Plague tier 2. Right now we have tier 1. Clinging Plague goes off. As soon as Plague goes off, we're going to use the device. You can see right here, we all get cleansed. Now we're kind of going to start moving towards the last square, because this area will pretty soon fill up. And you can see some of the puddles will probably go off, but as soon as we see the inductions go off, we just move. Infection on the player, he moves out, takes a hit, comes back in. Boss applies the Clinging Plague again, we just keep moving. We get puddles, we just shuffle over. As you can see, we're constantly spamming AoE stuns, especially the guard is really helpful with the shield smash. But if puddles go off, we just keep moving as a unit and just keep nuking the boss. As always, I would recommend focusing on AoE. We get Clinging Plague again, and once we get tier 2, we go and cleanse just to have an easier time. Nuke the boss with AoE, move from puddles, and at this point the boss should be around, like you can see, 30% morale. And the final stretch here is just that the LM still keeps the bigger rat locked down as he's been doing the whole time. And this part here, you just use this space and kind of walk in a square if you need, if you get puddles. Eventually the cleansing device will activate again, you can cleanse again if needed. But from this point, it's pretty straightforward. We got an infection, just take it out. I believe these puddles probably went off. So we move. As soon as you see, like, oh, we didn't get the interrupts. As soon as this goes off, like, boom, okay, now we have to move. Don't wait until the puddle spawns. You see, I move instantly, taking no damage. So that's a good lesson in timing with the puddles. But yeah, as you can see from this point, just pretty straightforward. Utilize the space in this final square and just kill the boss, making this fight very easy and controllable. No bigger rats spawning. Let's keep that one locked down. Our Runekeeper goes down to the puddles, I believe. but it's not a problem. Boss is almost dead. We simply just decide to finish the boss. We even use Cleanse again to get rid of the Clinging Plague. And yeah, that's the controlled fight of this boss fight, and it's by far my preferred way to do this. So with a little bit of practice, utilizing this space, starting in this corner, moving like this, and using the last quadrant here, should make this fight a piece of cake if you do it right. So that concludes my guide. This is my preferred strat for sure on the last boss. Hopefully this guide helps. Please consider subscribing to help out the channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to help out the channel. Leave a like, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next one. If you're playing or looking to play Lord of the Rings online, there is one place you need to be. The Ghyniverse! The Ghyniverse is a community Discord server for the game Lord of the Rings Online. In this server, you'll find anything from giveaways. There's also a frequently asked questions channel that I would recommend checking out first. You'll be able to see when I put out new YouTube videos, whenever I stream. You can also ask for the streamer role, and you'll be able to post your own streams in this server for everyone to see. There's currently over 5,000 members in this Discord, and it keeps growing. You will also find discussion channels about the game, LOTRO. You can ask any questions in the help channel. There's discussions for every single class in the game and PvP. But one of the best things about this server is the best in slot items section. In this section you can find trait lines for every single class. You will find screenshots of the current best gear being displayed. In this channel you'll find charts showing what stats you need for your characters, mitigations, mastery crit, finesse, but you'll also find useful information about drop rates in different instances. I hope you will consider joining my server, and maybe one day I'll see you in Middle Earth.